Every year, we take the seasons for granted. Spring melts into summer, summer fades into autumn, and autumn gives way to winter. It's a reliable, comforting rhythm, a promise kept by the planet itself. But what if one year, that promise was broken? What if, for one long, terrifying year, summer simply never arrived? The continent was plagued by near-constant, bone-chilling rain. Rivers like the Rhine flooded catastrophically. The sky was filled with a strange, brown and reddish fog that never seemed to lift. On that island stood a volcano that the world had long forgotten, Mount Tambora. It was a cataclysm of unimaginable force. The explosion was more than 100 times more powerful than the eruption of Vesuvius. Tambora had ejected a massive cloud of sulfur dioxide into the upper atmosphere. The result was a dramatic drop in global temperatures. The planet's climate had been fundamentally, violently altered. The year without a summer was not a punishment from God. It was the direct consequence of Mount Tambora. This gas mixed with water vapor to form a fine mist of sulfate aerosols, a legacy that shaped our culture in ways we can still feel today. Two of literature's most iconic monsters were born from the gloom of a volcanic eruption half a world away. This haze, this veil of microscopic droplets, was so vast that it spread out from the tropics and encircled the entire globe. It was so loud, it was heard over 2,000 kilometers away. It shows how a single event can trigger a global chain reaction, causing immense hardship, but also sparking incredible flashes of human creativity. It's a story of how our planet's immense power can disrupt our world in an instant, and how even in the darkest of years, humanity finds a way to create, to adapt, and to change the course of history forever. This crisis spurred a German inventor named Carl von Drey to create a solution, a two-wheeled running machine that a person could propel with their own feet. It was the first early version of the modern bicycle. The volcano blasted a colossal plume of ash, rock, and gas more than 40 kilometers into the sky, deep into the stratosphere. For days, the surrounding region was plunged into complete darkness. In Ireland, the failed potato crop led to a famine that triggered a typhus epidemic. This is not a work of fiction. It is the story of 1816, a year etched into history as the year without a summer. People were forced to eat rats, cats, and weeds to survive. The group included the poet Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and his 18-year-old future wife, Mary. To pass the time, Byron proposed a challenge. They should each try to write a ghost story. It was the last great subsistence crisis in the Western world, and at the time, no one knew why. A vision of a pale student of science kneeling beside the monstrous thing he had created. From that vision, she would write one of the most famous novels of all time, Frankenstein. Each region thought they were suffering alone, victims of some local, divine punishment. They had no idea that a single, cataclysmic event on the other side of the planet had connected all of them in a web of global suffering. A year of darkness, of biting cold in July, of crop failures and famine on a global scale. A time when people from Europe to North America stared up at a veiled, hazy sky and asked one terrifying question: what had gone wrong with the sun? They planted again, only for another frost to kill them in August. The corn harvest was devastated. The price of grain skyrocketed. People began to starve. The year began strangely, but it was in May of 1816 that people knew something was deeply wrong. In New England, a persistent, dry fog seemed to dim the sunlight, and it refused to burn off, even at midday. The days remained cold. In June, the true horror began. A massive cold front swept down from Canada. What should have been the start of summer became a bitter winter. Heavy snow fell in Vermont and New Hampshire. Ice on the lakes was thick enough to walk on. Across the United States, farmers watched in despair. They planted their crops, only to see them killed by a hard frost in July. And they were not alone. Across the Atlantic, Europe was suffering its own version of this strange, sunless year. Food riots broke out across Britain, France, and Germany. Desperate, starving mobs stormed grain warehouses. To find the cause, we must travel back in time 1 year to 1815, to an island in the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia. In April of 1815, Tambora awoke from its slumber and produced the most violent and powerful volcanic eruption in recorded human history. But the most devastating part of the eruption was invisible. This global veil acted like a planetary sunshade, reflecting a critical percentage of sunlight back into space, before it could reach and warm the Earth's surface. The suffering it caused was immense. But out of this darkness, an unexpected legacy was born. That gloomy summer of 1816, a group of English writers were vacationing by Lake Geneva, in Switzerland, trapped indoors by the relentless rain. As the storms raged outside, inspired by the Gothic atmosphere and conversations about new scientific ideas, Mary Shelley had a waking nightmare. In that same group, Lord Byron's physician, John Polidori, wrote a story called The Vampire, which would become the blueprint for the aristocratic, seductive vampire that would later inspire Bram Stoker's Dracula. The strange, spectacular sunsets created by the atmospheric ash also inspired the dramatic, colorful, and turbulent skies in the paintings of the great artist J.M.W. Turner. And the legacy doesn't stop there. The famine caused a desperate shortage of oats to feed horses, the primary mode of transportation. The story of 1816 is a powerful, humbling reminder of the interconnectedness of our world.